The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
What's up, y'all? This is Nigel Hall.
It's Derek Freeman.
And you are now in tune to the Shadow People. And we have our esteemed guest.
Oh, man.
The real LeBron.
Oh, my God.
Actual LeBron Joseph.
I had the name first.
He had the name first. That's why I'm
Clearly.
That's why I'm saying that.
Yeah,
because you are the actual LeBron. The only LeBron that is allowed to sit next to me. How about that?
LBJ, y'all, the one and only New Orleans finest.
New Orleans.
Y'all know
finest.
some twins. Y'all know.
So
Man.
glad to have you here, man.
So glad, man.
I'm honored to be here, man. I'm loving what y'all doing. I absolutely love the conversations. I love the peek behind the curtains of the music industry. I love to be able to hear you cats. And, you know, it'd be different if it was coming from some dudes who couldn't play. But, you know,
Right.
I'd be less interested.
I know that's right.
But coming from cats who, you know, put in the time, who got chops, who appreciate the culture here, appreciate the music, you know, or members of that community, I love it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
man.
really appreciate
Pleasure,
you. When we
man.
found out that you were a fan of the show,
We geeked out. We geeked out
we
hard.
geeked out so hard. We were like, "Yo, we made it. We started from the bottom. Now we here, my nigga."
No, I mean just to have. I'm just saying, just because you know we have fans all over the world, music fans, but like to have a real New Orleans icon be down with the
Straight
squad.
up.
That just the validation we feel from that
Straight up.
is amazing.
I appreciate it, man. I
Yeah.
really, really do. But you know what? There's an envy there too, because you can have conversations. I work in proper media. I work for
Yeah, you gotta
know,
keep
I
You
work
gotta
for a
keep it
couple of
together.
billion-dollar corporations.
You gotta keep it buttoned
you know what
up.
I'm saying? Some
Yep.
shit I
Yeah.
can't really say. You
You're
dig?
right.
Yeah, right.
But it's great to hear you guys and have the conversations that you have and all, and I love it. I absolutely love it. You know.
Yeah, I appreciate it because I remember it was a while ago, but when Nigel Hall Band was on your show.
Oh yeah.
And I really felt like I made it. I was like, "Oh, I'm on TV." I was nervous, and like it's rare that I'm nervous.
Oh no,
too,
man, that was a big deal.
And that was a big deal.
Be on
though,
news
for
with
me,
us
and I
was a
just
big deal.
and
Like
man, news
Derek,
with it. Yeah, that was
this
heavy.
is where I fell in love with Nigel, which I already loved his work, and I had heard him and seen him and all that in videos and everything. But they was warming up, and he played Bell and James, Living It Up. And see, that was one of them jams I used to crash out with. I used to crash out with when I DJ'd in clubs in the 80s and 90s and all that. So I was like, "Oh, Living It Up!" I started singing. You know, and he didn't play that song. He
that was just the warm up. Yeah.
that was
What'd you
just
do?
the
Give me a
warm-up.
sign.
Yeah,
right?
I think we
Yeah,
did
yeah.
Give Me a Sign, and I
Yeah.
think we
Oh, that's
did
when the
Don't
record dropped.
Change,
When
too. Yeah.
Nigel Hall dropped. Yeah.
Yeah, that was right around that time when
Yeah, that
when
was
I was
cool.
promoting that record.
I
man.
love great musicians, man. I love real musicians. We were talking a little earlier. You know, I'm a St. Aug man. I went to the school and played in the band and all. It was fun, but you know, a bunch of the cats that I played with went on to be professional musicians, and I went on to play music in college and all that. I went to Loyola. I wanted to study communications, and you know, I have an appreciation. I was talking to Ellis Marcellus years ago. I did an interview with him, and he told me he used to play saxophone. I didn't know that, right? He said, "Yeah, I played saxophone until, you know, there was a cat who basically made me go home and put away my saxophone."
That happens. That happens a lot.
Why does that always happen in music school?
So my point is that I don't know if I ever was made to go home and put away my horn, but I went to school with some cats who I knew could play. Right. Terrence and I were in the band. Blanchard, we're in the band together freshman year. Now Terrence eventually left St. Aug because at the time you couldn't go to a Catholic school and also attend NOCA. Right. And so Mr. Hampton, to his credit, and Ellis got together and they facilitated that he would leave St. Aug, I think went to Kennedy or something, and he could go to NOCA. So that's real, you know, that's a vision of a band director knowing that this kid is, you know what I'm saying? But Terrence was first chair, first trumpet freshman year. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
That's a lost cause.
So there was a couple of them kind of cats I went to school with. So for me, it became a I love it, and I love playing in the camaraderie of playing in marching bands, even in junior high at Bell and stuff. Went to school with a bunch of great cats, but I knew I didn't have the commitment lifelong to want to do it. So I have an appreciation for you guys that really can play and do your thing, man. So thanks for having me, bro. I'm
man, that's funny. It's funny that you bring up Ellis, you know, because we talk about him often. He just comes up, you know. And like when I was in one of his classes at UNO. And, you know, we were fucking up. Like, you know, it's like he gave us like the assignment. We're kind of like, you know, it's like, you know, jazz improv class. Like, man, whatever. Come on.
What is y'all
play
doing?
anything, right?
So, like, it was me and his cat, John Ellis. You know John Ellis, the sax player. So, me and cat, John Ellis. Like, Ellis, at this point, Ellis had never cursed at me up until this point. He's cursed at me a lot before he died. Don't tell me. But at this point, he hadn't cursed at me. And he pulled me and John Ellis out.
It's like
the
a
room,
badge
and he
of
was
honor.
Like, yeah, he pulled me and John Ellis out the class. He was like, see, I'm tired of this bullshit. He's like, y'all supposed to set a fucking example. You know, it's like, man, I'm just like, whoa, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? He was like,
Yeah, he crashed out on you.
And then he was like, you know,
crashed out.
he was like, yeah, you know, my you know, when I taught high school, my high school students knew this shit better than y'all. And I was like, wait, pause. Which high school students? You talking about Terrence Blanchard, Harry Connick Jr., Branford Whitten, Donald Harrison? I'm like, come on, bro. I said, you can't get...
I mean, still though.
Yeah, but he wasn't lying. But I was like,
you know what I'm saying? Like, where's the line?
Yeah, you can't compare him to, you can compare us to them. Come on, bro.
You put me on the level.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, well, we brought you here for several reasons, but one is, you know, you had asked us off camera, or it was probably on camera, knowing Drew, but how we got the name, the Shallow People.
I'm
Well, we got it because we
about
black. And me and Nigel did a lot of shit in the shadows before we changed our lives and all
Me
that.
too.
So, you know, so you get it.
Number.
You know,
So you get it, yeah.
But actually, on that line, like the real reason I wanted to bring you here initially is because you know, it's right now we're in the week of Juneteenth, and I really want to talk about Juneteenth and the significance of that and what it means to people. You know, we know it comes from Texas, but it got a significant meaning to people in New Orleans. So could you expound upon that?
You know what's interesting about it is the celebrations of Juneteenth were bigger and have been bigger outside of the city of New Orleans. And I think it's a couple of different reasons. But first things first, the celebrations in Texas, I know Houston has a pretty big one, and even Dallas. Even outside of New Orleans, but in the state of Louisiana, Baton Rouge always had a really big Juneteenth celebration. I was operations manager of some of the stations here, the radio stations here and up there. And man, that Juneteenth deal was like Family Day in the Park down here. It was a big deal. It was huge. And I'm talking 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago or whatever. So they've always been bigger than here. But I don't think that it was a knock on New Orleans not wanting to honor what that is all about. I just think that New Orleans has just been an Afrocentric city for so very, very long that it becomes another thing that we can celebrate, right? And in the modern era, you have the Essence Festival and all of that, which is kind of butted right up against that, which is probably one of the, you know, if you're really looking at African-American celebrations of anything, you know, Essence is 25, 30 years old now, you know what I'm saying? So that's right in there. So that's one thing. But I do think the significance of Juneteenth and celebrating what that is big. Getting back to the city, we also had free people of color here, unlike many of the southern places. This is that, you know, we remain today that one kind of oddity in the South, which is we're in the South,
which is surprising to really.
Yeah, we're in the deep South, but we're kind of a little different.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're in the Caribbean too, so that's part of it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think one of the reasons that I moved here was because I recognized immediately from the first time that I ever came here how different this place was.
Yeah.
And how different, and how as a black man I could flourish, because I came here from New York. Okay. Not to be talking about New York.
You already did.
Cause y'all,
We got enough flag for that already.
I already got enough shit from y'all motherfuckers. Y'all don't play with me. But I moved from New York here, and I was like, you know, I did my first jazz fest, and then I just felt at home. I felt like I could come, like this was a place where I could just fully and truly be who I was.
He had a 504 number like 5 years before he moved here.
I had a 504 number.
He did
3 years before I moved here. I was in Harlem with a 504. I was on my way, and everybody was like, "Oh, you bullshit." And then now I live uptown.
Right.
What's up?
Right.
So, but part, a lot of the culture that because I grew up. Excuse me. I grew up in Islam. My father was the minister of the Nation of Islam. So I grew up with a knowledge of self, and I grew up with a knowledge of who I was as a black man, what my ancestry was. I know about all of that.
Which is a blessing.
Which is a blessing because people who are my age, especially now, are just really starting to get into that. And that was something that I was immersed in, along with the music.
Right.
The music was a huge contributor to me also knowing about who I was and what I was here to represent, because that is the most honest expression of them all.
That is correct.
So,
and you're not going to study that music without knowing the history of that music and playing and all that.
Exactly. And so one of those things, like, when I found out, when I was learning about New Orleans, when I got here and I learned about Congo Square and the significance of Congo Square, that was one of the main things. I was like, oh, shit, what?
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
This spot right here?
This spot right here, I was standing in, you know?
Yeah.
So bringing it back to Juneteenth, just because I'm out of curiosity, because, I grew up in Texas, like you said, so it was something that was ingrained in me as growing up, and then, like, moving to New Orleans as a teenager for 30 years, nobody talked about it, and then all of a sudden it was a thing again, because it's like a national holiday. So what is the significance of it in New Orleans in present day?
Well, I think, you know what? There was always a couple of people trying to do celebrations here. Man, the cat's name escapes me because he always tried to do something. But he had a Juneteenth festival, even going back to when I said there weren't really many things going on.
Right.
I think it was Mobley or Mosley. John on the West Bank.
John Mosley.
John Mosley had his thing on the West Bank doing his deal for many, many years and all of that. I think the education of Juneteenth for us now is a beautiful thing because it has been embraced more and people are doing more things. Certainly, it helps that it's a national holiday or was declared a national holiday. Now, how long that's going to be, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Don't get me started, bro.
But you know what
whenever you see this look on my face, bro, just don't ask me. Talk to him.
And I do think that it was always taught. You know what I'm saying? In schools and everything else.
Right.
But in terms of it being the celebration or whatever, or the commemoration, I just think that, and there are more conscious entities, Ashe and Community, Vera and people like that, and Amistad and everything else that have, also say, hey, we've been telling y'all about this. Welcome to the party, y'all. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
It's those things. I think it's growing. But again, I really think that there were extenuating circumstances as to why it wasn't there from the very beginning, if you will. See what I'm saying?
Now, me personally, I think I have a little concerns about it because now that it is a national holiday, that means white people get that day off too, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, but how do they celebrate it? Because we know how white people celebrate Cinco de Mayo.
And King Day.
See what I'm saying? So like,
in fact,
so I'm saying, think about it. Do we want white people celebrating us in that way? You know what I mean? Like, because Cinco de Mayo, they're like putting on a sombrero. It's like, you gonna dress up like Tupac now? Like, what are we doing? Because I want to make sure we keep it.
You know what? If I may,
I'm curious about it.
If you want to know how I think white people should celebrate Juneteenth,
yes,
just stay your ass home. Stay in the house.
And chill.
Stay home and chill. Look, if it's a day off for you,
watch BET.
Just stay home. Watch BET. Watch as many Tyler Perry movies as you want. In the comfort of your own home, don't come out the house.
Here's
we ain't gonna do nothing to you if you come out the house. Stay your ass at home.
I welcome anybody.
I'm just saying, bro, and that ain't. I ain't mean cut you off.
No.
But I'm just saying, and that's not disrespectful.
Right. No.
That's not disrespectful.
Right.
But I'm just saying, bro.
Because we know some of y'all have good intentions.
We know as soon as we start doing something, and as soon as it becomes dope, then you want to get into it, and you want to figure out how you can come in and contribute. And look, y'all need to be contributing in other ways.
Yeah.
Not on Juneteenth.
Not on Juneteenth.
You know, because y'all motherfuckers didn't even tell us that we was free. Right. So I don't even want to hear none of that. Stay your ass in the house. That's all I'm gonna say.
I welcome any celebration.
See, that's therapy right there.
Got it off, huh? Got it off your chest. Look, man.
Okay.
I welcome any celebration anyway, as long as it's respectful. What I don't particularly condone is, and don't get me wrong, it's not. But this is commerce. It's not necessarily just for African American holidays. But I saw just a couple of weeks ago the Memorial Day mattress sale. You think what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So as long as we can get away from the Juneteenth pillow
Come
sale.
on, Juneteenth, come on, get your fried chicken and watermelon. Come on down and get it.
Yeah, the Juneteenth all white sale at Macy's.
Oh,
We can stay
man.
away from that one.
Oh,
You think what I'm saying? I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Oh,
We
that's
can stay off the
hilarious.
commerce. You think?
That's hilarious. I
Just
feel
let
you,
that
though.
be that. But,
Right.
you know, and corporate America has also figured out a way to sort of get around some of the holidays that they feel are, I won't say questionable, but they lump them in.
Right.
And even at, one or two of the companies I work for, it becomes a group of holidays that are floating, and you can take it or not. Now, I call bullshit on some of that. You dig what I'm saying? Because they do it for King Day, right?
Right.
And here, they're almost given a pass in New Orleans because when you look at a corporate entity, right, and let's say Mardi Gras, all right, that's a holiday that's not celebrated anywhere else in the country. So how do I give these employees in New Orleans off for Mardi Gras? Now, mind you, I'm on the broadcast side, so we work every Mardi Gras. I'm with the Indians, we broadcast and all kind of stuff.
Right.
But for the salespeople and all that other stuff, it becomes a pack of 3 or 4 holidays that are floating. Okay, you can either take King Day or Mardi Gras or this or that, which is kind of unfair. You think what I'm saying? Is it a holiday or not? You
Right.
dig?
Right.
So they figured out a way to get around some of it. But what you gonna do, man?
Right.
But I love the fact that it's being pushed more to the forefront. Like you said, Derek, coming from Texas, it was always something that was hip for y'all, and school's out and this, and it's a part of the deal. I'm happy that we're coming to the party finally. I don't think we've achieved what other folks are achieving yet. I know some of the holidays in the Atlantas and the Detroits and places like that are huge. But again, I just think we've been this unique little oasis kind of place that not that we didn't have a need for Juneteenth, but certainly we've had.
We got too many days off already.
We got
We already got too many days off.
Too many goddamn
And
days
some celebrations happen,
Another thing I wanted to say too is the one thing that black people I feel can do better with in terms of Juneteenth is supporting black businesses.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you said, it's commerce. So why can't we go out and support our own and start to build a community? First of all, you got to have a community to build from first.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that's really hard to set something like that up in something that's already, predestined basically for failure. But I think we as black people control that as well.
Yeah.
If we go out and support these things, then we can set our communities up for success rather than them sitting in the areas where they could fail without our support.
Also, we blessed
you know
in
what I'm
that,
saying?
and I agree, but we're also blessed because it's just black businesses amongst us because where
That's
we live.
true.
And so a lot of places there's a zone.
yeah.
There's the black business zone. You know what I'm saying? So it's easier, right? So it's like even easier for us here to do that. You know what I'm saying? Because there's black businesses everywhere. You know what I mean? So we should also. But on that note, I just want to take a little break. Because I want to switch gears a little bit when we come back. Because I want to talk a little bit about LBJ career. Because we want you to
Because we got to go. We
gotta get into it, baby.
We happy. I said sweat.
So yeah, we'll be right back on the Shadow People with Nigel Hall, Derek Freeman, LBJ. Right back.
We'll be right back after these messages. All right. Segment 2 of the Shadow People. I am Nigel Hall,
Derek Freeman,
and we have our esteemed host with us, or guest.
He's actually not hosting.
He's actually not hosting. He's usually a host, but he's not a host. We have LeBron Joseph, the great, the GOAT, with us.
Man, I'm so happy to be here. I really am. I'm tickled to death to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah, we are very glad to have you here.
So let's talk about you, sir. I mean, people in New Orleans
Don't
know
you got a record coming up?
Right. No. So like,
No,
news with a twist. We all love that, and you know, Tamika, we all love her. We were all on it. Shit, all three of us played on news with a twist.
Yeah,
so we love that. And but what's new for you now? What's on the horizon?
You know what? I've done so much. First of all, this year is 45 years since I started in radio.
Wow.
And I still do a weekend show on Wild FM. The industry is very different than the industry I got in.
Yeah.
But it's been a hell of a ride, and the game really don't owe me nothing, right? So by
There's a bar.
Message, you're a bar.
Bar.
yeah, but to start in radio, my freshman year at Loyola, I was actually on the campus station and had heard about this cat. There was a dude, playing band in St. Aug and all that stuff. I always loved music. You know, you 16, 17 years old, you catch your groove, and you know that's funk, that's Parliament, the Earth, Wind and Fire, the whole set, right? And I loved it, and I'd heard about a little thing that this cat by the name of Brute Bailey was doing. Now, Brute, a great radio name, right? Brute was the program director of WYLD AM and FM. And Brute was one of the great radio station program directors out here, but he had come from D.C. He not only programmed those two stations, but on the weekends he had a class that he taught people in the community who wanted to learn radio. He would just teach you. And, you know, a little class of 4 or 5 people at a time. And within that class, that come through that class and all started our career together would have been, the class before me was probably Papa Smurf. The class either before him or right along that time would have been Terry Davis, who's now, you know, the communications director over at City Hall. So all of us, Dwight Lucian, we all came through. And Dwight is the one who turned me on to Brute, saying, hey, this man, I know you're doing a little thing up at Loyola, but this man has this thing. And so Brute did this class on the weekends, and he'd tell you straight up, you know, hey, man, look, I can't promise any of y'all a job. But what I can show you is how this works and how to use your voice and teach you how to do commercial production and stuff like that. And I remember thinking when he was saying that, I was like, shit, you gonna hire me? I love this shit. You know what I'm saying? So, and that really came to pass within a couple of months of coming in there. I was a kid that you basically had to put out of the radio station. You know, when you find something that you really love, it was that kind of thing. And I had a bunch of people over the years, and even in those early years, that also understood that I was in school, kind of took me under their wing. You know, some of those folks still around, Warren Bell, Denise Ferret, who would, they were doing morning drive or something. She'd come in, I would sleep on the couch like this, knocked out, had been in the studio all night or been in the production room. Hey, LeBron, you got class? Yeah, get up. We'll go wash your face and stuff. I drop you off uptown. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's love. And so that became what it, you know what I'm saying, me working for the stations. And so I was hired on YLD AM and did that back and forth, working for that would have been Interurban Broadcasting a couple of different times over the years, and also becoming starting to work clubs, DJing in clubs and stuff like that, and really probably more profitable for me to work clubs that early in the career. But I was still doing some radio and all of that kind of stuff, and it was fun. And it was fun. It was a hell of a good time. Part of my story is that, you know, that was also the heyday, halcyon days of sex, drugs, and rock and roll on the radio side. You think what I'm saying? So that's a part of my story. And
Shadow People.
Shadow People. There you go.
He was one of the first Shadow People.
I was early on. I was an early adapter. You know what I'm saying? Of the Shadow People concept, right? And believe it or not, you know, I had to go through what I had to go through with all of that. And about 10 years in, I actually moved to New York for a year between gigs in '79.
Where'd you live in New York?
Okay, I'm actually born in New York. I was born in Rockville Center, Mercy Hospital. Wow. We lived on Long Island. My grandmother lived in Carl Place. My brother DJ, when he graduated Loyola, I moved up there to help him with his foundation. And I was living in Westbury in '79. And then I moved back here and started at QUE. So I was on the first Q93 staff that really took the station to number one, eventually becoming program director of YLD FM. And all of that, kind of continuing to sort of grow. And my programming career, I programmed and did mornings and stuff for about 25 years. And then the whole opportunity with Twist and all of that came about. But I'd already done some TV stuff here and there, but that was the first solid, you know what I'm saying, TV thing or whatever. But all along the way, man, it's been one of those things where I really see, I learned radio as a community entity. That's kind of how Brute programmed. He had a bunch of different things that we did between the music, legal advice and medical advice, and you know what I'm saying, getting the black mayor elected in New Orleans, and you know what I'm saying, it was community radio. It was, I look back at it now, an ability to tell the story of the people of New Orleans. That's really what I've always done, and that's kind of what I do today. That's kind of what Twist was for me, tell the story of the people of New Orleans. And so I've been blessed to be able to do that. I don't know if I have this career anywhere else, but here I have it. And it's been a blast.
That's awesome, man. Because you are definitely one of the OGs of that, and definitely one of my favorites. But my question to you is, we kind of have Derek and I, we kind of have a general idea of how things have changed. But for those who are listening and watching, tell us the difference of how it was then as it is from when you started. Right. To now?
Oh, well, I think a number of different things. Where do I start? Okay. From the ownership side, and I mention ownership because it might seem like it's in the wood, but it really affects us today in here, right? On the ownership side, what began to happen is that deregulation happened. And while Bill Clinton would have been the president to sign that, this theme was starting to roll way before that, probably in the Reagan administration and all of that, to deregulate the number of broadcast entities a company could own. So how does that affect us here locally? Well, what we had as an industry in both radio and television were mom and pops. In other words, Nigel Hall's daddy might have owned a radio station in New Orleans or Hattiesburg or whatever, right? So if Nigel Hall's daddy owns a radio station, he got a playlist. They decide not only what gets played on the station through his program director or whatever, but they decide what they want to cover. They decide what the advertisers are going to be and all of that kind of stuff, who they're targeting, how they're serving that community, correct? When deregulation happened, your dad might have started getting old. Nigel liked to play piano. Hey, man, I'm getting too old for this radio station. You want to take this over? Nah, Dad, look like we can sell that for about $2-3 million, right? And so those companies started to eat up all of these privately owned mom and pops across the country.
And now we have iHeartRadio.
And now we have iHeart and Intercom and Nexstar and all of these other big companies, and how they serve their shareholders and their bottom lines are very different from how we serve them as individual owners and all. So that not only affected that, but let's talk about what it is you do as musicians. Your music and your ability to get local airplay gets diminished dramatically because those playlists are being generated nationally. You understand what I'm saying? And so how we get to that place, and early on the corporate side, it wasn't like that. And especially early on in hip hop, where in fact you had these different scenes. You had an Atlanta scene, a LA scene, a New Orleans scene, you had the East Coast scene. So Wayne becomes an entity and Master P becomes an entity, and Marrero, MC Thick, all of these songs were playing on the radio of this organic local hip hop scene. Can be a part of what happens. That has changed now. I've only been removed from being a program director about 5 years. I have no idea how to get a local artist on the radio. I have no idea.
Well, and also
it ain't just budget, it ain't just content, it ain't whatever.
Jeff was talking a little bit about that too, actually.
Jeff was telling us the same shit.
But because what I remember as a kid, sometime in the 80s, like I remember they had black radio stations, they had white radio stations. And I remember a lot of people don't know this, like when Madonna first came out, her first 2 songs was on black radio.
Yeah,
They considered dance
I was
hits.
playing Borderline
That's
on
what I'm saying.
Baton Rouge WXOK when I was working on
So
that station.
I remember going to the mall with my mama to buy jeans. You know how you go buy jeans, they got all the displays and shit. And they had Borderline, the video was on, and I was like, she's white? Like, you know what I mean? And it's crazy because
Bobby Caldwell,
Bobby Caldwell got everybody. But like Madonna music, I mean, her music sounds pop to us now, and pop that's what pop music sounds like.
Yeah.
But when she first came out, that was black music.
Yeah.
So did the deregulation? Is that when the music started?
Well, no, you always
get
had
convoluted?
black and white stations. You always had that. That even predates that because that goes back to race records and all that other kind of stuff. Even in the 50s, at the beginning of rock and roll, which would have been R&B, right? So all of that stuff. Yes, so that has always been a part of it. You still have them now. You still have what's considered pop radio. You still have a pop chart. You still have an urban chart.
Right.
And then you have what's called, what do they call it now? Rhythmic, which is really a hip-hop chart, but primarily targeted to white audience,
Right.
to young white kids. You dig what I'm saying? So there's that too, today.
I dig.
Now, so it seems like the balance of the power is there. Right on the corporate side. Here's the counterbalance today: technology. Whereas opposed to you needing to pay someone to go cut that record you made, you can do that at your house. As opposed to you trying to come up with a different whatever, you can cut that at your house now.
Yeah.
As opposed for y'all asking permission to have the Shadow People podcast.
Right.
We just do it.
You just do it.
Right.
Just do it.
Because the technology is there.
Right.
And it's one of the things that I try to preach to young people because I hear from some people, I think I want to get into doing this. I think I want, okay, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Because the technology is there ain't nothing but some air and opportunity out here. I think I might want to try to be a photographer. Go buy my fucking camera.
Right.
Go start shooting. What you waiting on?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. That's basically how we. That's basically
What
how this
you
podcast
waiting
started.
on?
started.
We were having this conversation like, wait, why don't we just do it?
And look, and here's the
That's
other
literally how it
thing is
started.
that Derek and I, for the longest time, we knew that we needed to have a podcast together.
We've
or
been
some
talking about this
sort
for almost 10
We've
years.
been talking about this
Right.
shit for 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
okay? Since we met each other.
Right.
Because we would have conversations.
You know what kind of show we need?
Yeah,
You know what kind of
man.
show?
Well, people
all
would
the
say
time.
that to us too. People
Yeah,
would
yeah.
just hang out with us.
To
And be like,
We
y'all
would be
two-
at the end of a gig, just
y'all
in the
need a show,
backstage
yeah.
talking
Right.
shit crazy as hell. And they'd be like, yo, y'all need a show.
Right.
Don't need someone's permission today because the technology exists. Now, are you going to have the audience and are you going to have this? Well, what helps that grow to where it needs to be is consistency. You just got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
You just got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what that is. And that's what this is and why I love it so much. And there is opportunity for anyone to do it and to do because the interest is so much. You know what I'm saying? It's a big world, man.
Yeah.
My son and them, and he 18, bro, and Lord have mercy.
I can tell.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Them dudes,
As soon as he said it,
dog.
we already knew.
he come on and be like, Dad, look at this. Hey, yo. Yeah, I'm gonna put such and such on my car. I'm like, okay, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
About to change the exhaust on my car. I'm like, okay.
Oh, man.
We gotta get some
All right, bro.
YNs on the show. We
We gotta get some
yeah,
YNs.
yeah,
So
yeah.
look, look, one of these days we're gonna have the YN episode.
And just
And
let him go.
Please,
And just
I
let him
gotta
go.
watch
Oh my God!
We're gonna just
And
let him go, dog.
We're gonna have my son Rasul.
We let him lead it. We're gonna let
who's 23
Rasul
years
lead it.
old.
Rasul's 23.
Rasul is 23.
Legend. My boy is 18.
There they go.
And he right in there.
Oh, my God.
I'm sure they're in the same wheelhouse.
Let 'em have it.
Because
Oh,
they
man.
We're gonna let him
just
have it. We're gonna let him have it.
Let's
Oh,
just
man,
go
we're gonna
on.
let them
Please.
host the show.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
let him host the
please
show.
let the balance. And I love the balance being that way because I think even for artists and all that, and just as I said, I don't know how to get a record played. Quite frankly, I do know that the public still weighs in. You understand? I do know that it's not just about having a big budget and a big promotions team and a major label. I know that motherfucker with the boots and the fans and shit ain't had no budget. You know what I'm saying? Where them fans at? That hot ass record right
But
now.
that's what
But
Jazzy
the
Jeff was saying
public
too. Like
weighs in.
we have the same platform as Beyonce.
That is correct.
We have the same platform.
That is correct.
She got the fan base.
Yeah.
But the platform's here.
Yeah.
We can do this shit.
Exactly. She got the fan base, the budget, the this, to that,
Yeah.
sign a major label and all that other stuff. So the point I'm making is continue the content, content, you know, and so that's that, you know.
Yeah, when you mentioned about the bigger corporations eating up the mom and pops thing, it's just an age-old thing that continues to just happen.
Right.
Because if anybody watching and listening, I don't know if y'all have ever seen the Stax documentary.
Oh my God.
But man, I'm telling you, if you want to see an example of what exactly we're talking about, literally the exact fucking thing that we just talked about, that LBJ just talked about, is that documentary, because it talks about how Stax became one of the greatest music purveyors of that era, and they were up against Motown. They were up against TSOP. I don't really think they were. Maybe, I don't know. But definitely up against
TSOP
Motown.
was
definitely
slightly later.
They were slightly later after that. But that
CBS and everybody.
CBS, all that. And then Atlantic just came down and just bit by bit, brick by brick, just took
literally
apart.
brick by brick. They literally took the building apart.
Literally took the building apart and it collapsed.
Right.
The building. So, you know, that's part of the reason why I'm really into doing this podcast and doing things at like such a smaller scale, because I've been been fortunate enough to go all over the world, to play music with my heroes, to do things with my friends. You know what I'm saying? But I really don't think that I personally could deal with the level, say as a Beyonce, or say as even a Master P, you know what I'm saying, dealing with that level and having that much access. You know what I'm saying? Because doing it at look, I'm not saying that I want this to grow, and I want my records to sell, and I want to win with my homies.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But you know, I do also firmly believe that, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. You only take just what you need and pass it around.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying?
Understand. Yeah,
and
I understand exactly what
I
you're
think
getting
that in the
at.
business aspect of it, I think that when people realize that they got a hold of something, they try to milk it for everything, like to you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let's
do
another version of that.
Yeah, it bothers. Let's do it. Look, what if we did this? And then, no, motherfucker, just keep doing what you're doing.
Right, exactly.
What are you doing? It's working. Why you gonna fuck it up? You know. So
I had a real X-rated reference I was gonna make. I'm gonna let that go. Sorry, that's where my head went. So, LBJ, let's.
Sure.
So, I mean, you know, you older than us, but you're a young man, so I don't see you retiring anytime soon. So, what's in the future for you?
I know one thing. I want to be like you when I get there.
Yeah, I'm trying to inspire you that way,
dude. First of all,
I want to ask Scott.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
right, exactly.
I am. I talk for a living, man, and so as far as me talking about some retirement or shutting it down or whatever, man, I done worked a whole lot harder for the money. So you think what I'm saying?
Right.
If y'all just telling me to show up and the time and this and this, hey, bro, I'm in it for the game for however long as I can do it. You know,
love it.
I feel blessed to be able to do the thing that I do. When Twist ended, and Twist ended not necessarily something we wanted to end. It was a show that had great legs. It made money and all of that, but we were bought by a company called Nexstar. To speak of big companies, I need to say that Nexstar decided they wanted to be, well, first of all, Nexstar as an entity has a couple of different things that there are company objectives, right? One of them was to launch their own sort of CNN model, which is like, it's called News Nation. And as opposed to them having a bureau in New York and a bureau in Chicago and all of that, they own more stations than anybody. It's almost like the iHeart, but on television news side, right? And as opposed to having bureaus in all these places.
Clear Channel?
Huh? Clear Channel used to be, Clear Channel is what iHeart used to be.
But that station he's talking about, that station he's talking about is the news station on like
WGNO.
We turn it like Samsung TV on. That's
okay.
News Nation.
Right.
Exactly.
I was just trying to be clear.
Right. So the point I'm making is Nexstar had an objective of their stations that they own, local stations being what feeds News Nation. So everybody sort of feeds that, right? And when they first bought us, I mean, they spent a whole lot of money to buy the company. They bought Tribune. And of course, you look at the books and we're making money here and all that. It certainly wasn't an objective to sort of change something that's making money. But you had two entities that happened, or two incidents that happened, if you will, both of them pretty notable in this market, which accelerated the demise of Twist, one being Hurricane Ida, but the bigger one being the pandemic. And when the pandemic happened, that shifted everything. It's like, hey, look, let's go ahead and pull the trigger on this news thing.
Because it's a hands-on show. We can't do that show unless
To my credit, or to that actually helped me, is that they asked me to do a local programming thing where, in fact, I would do what they call Moving New Orleans Forward, which gets back to telling the story of the people of New Orleans, right? And so that umbrella is really big. I cover stories that could be anything from the Shadow People podcast to a great new restaurant to some kids needing books to whatever, you dig?
Yeah.
And so there's really no, hey, you need to go cover, such and such and such. Okay, it ain't that type of thing for me.
Somebody would tell you what you need to be doing. You know who I am. Right.
It's a beautiful
Have
arrangement.
you ever heard of me?
It's a beautiful arrangement, and I continue to get to tell a story, man. And how can I not want to do that? You see what I'm saying?
Of course.
It'd be a whole lot different if they were telling me I need to do something else. And we still cover heavy stuff. If I need to go and grab me and the cameraman need to go cover the hurricane or the tornado, I did all of that. You know, I was one of the first reporters on the ground for the terror attack. You know what I'm saying? And so we get there, we're hearing in the newsroom a bunch of screaming from first responders. We need as many ambulances as we can get. And, just a whole bunch of really stuff that you don't hear at 3 o'clock in the morning when we get to work.
That shit is crazy.
Right. And that's what we're hearing on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And
we talked about that on the podcast. Several podcasts.
We stumble in there. I mean, I probably had fallen asleep a little later than I know because New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah.
Wake up, go to the station. We're doing the editorial. We do an editorial meeting every morning at 3 a.m. Only 4 or 5 of us in the newsroom, and dude, that's what we're hearing on the radio. And the radio's not even loud. We just, oh my God, we need as many. I need what is that?
What's going on down there? Yeah, we gotta check that out.
Bourbon and Canal, and okay, so I'm like, okay, well, I got to go out there, bro. And so I get there, I don't know, 4:15 or whatever, 4:20, and when I get down there, I'm going to meet the photographer who's coming from another way. And dude, I ain't never seen that many ambulances,
That is insane.
And where it got real, because at the point, we don't know still, even as we're on the ground, and news crews are starting to show up because they're hearing the same thing. We get an email from NOPD about 4:10 that says there's been a traffic fatality on Bourbon Street. Mm-hmm. That's what they called it. Didn't say how many victims or nothing.
They didn't say a terrorist attack. Traffic fatality.
Yeah, so So I get down there and say, oh, this look like more than a traffic fatality.
Right. Uh-huh.
And it got real when 4 or 5 coroner's vehicles showed up. Because here's the deal. We've all been on scenes where something happened in the hood and there's a coroner's wagon. So, oh, man, he dead. Or, there's a chance somebody, whatever. But 4 or 5 of them, I ain't never seen that.
Feeling.
And, and 20 ambulances and all them lights. So you knew.
You want to hear something crazy about that night? Uh-huh. I don't know if you because I mentioned it on the podcast, but, my son, Rasul, was here visiting for Christmas during that time. And, he's 23 years old, and I'm not going to tell him he can't go to the quarter and go have fun. And do, just because I don't do this shit no more, don't mean you can't. I was the crackhead, not you.
I did my time. In fact, my game was so terrible, by the time I was to the end, I couldn't even go in the quarter no more, dog.
That's why I'm glad you go in the quarter. LBJ come and shut it down.
He go to fucked up shit. I used to live in the quarter.
He did.
So there you go.
A block from the trash bar. A block from the trash bar.
But here go the crazy shit was, he was like, Dad, I want to go to the quarter. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, look, it's not Maine, because that's where he lives. He lives in Maine. And I'm like, this is not Maine, bro. This is New Orleans. This is the French Quarter. So don't go down there thinking that you in Portland, because this ain't it.
Deal.
Bro,
right,
you need to make sure you got your shit together. If you're going to drink, have yourself a good time, but make sure you drinking water and make sure your head is on a swivel. You hear
Shut
me?
on out, get on out of there.
Because he's 23, he's like, okay, all right, okay, and me and my wife trying to tell him, and then he calls me at like. I took him down there like 9 o'clock, and he calls me at like 1:30, 2 o'clock, and he's like, all right, Dad, I'm ready to come home. Go to pick him up. He's drunk. perfect, mission accomplished,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Got him home. I'm like, okay, thank God he in the house. I'm telling you, in the morning.
later, right.
I mean, it was an hour later, but
when it should happen,
because I get up early. And then in the morning, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, see,
Yeah.
and he's just like, yo,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's funny, but it ain't funny because
It's deep, man.
it's deep, and then to just and the other thing is too is he was just like, man. I walk because they would show the pictures.
They show the shots.
And the pictures of the victims.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like
He
that,
saw one of the
like that.
girls,
I walked
He
right
saw-
past there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like, I saw that dude. I walked
Man.
right past that dude. And look, I'm telling the story and I'm getting goosebumps, man.
It's
Because
deep, man.
it's some deep shit. We're gonna take another quick break, real quick, and we'll be right back after these messages.
talk about Sly.
Yeah, we gotta talk about Sly. We gotta have you here for that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a short pause for the calls, and we'll be right back after these messages. All right, we are back. Shadow people.
Shadow people.
Yep. We got LBJ in here with us. We are having just a great time.
I'm
man.
having a
We-
blast.
We are so glad.
All we need is some dominoes.
Talk some shit.
I know some barbecue.
Go get a plate from uptown from around
I
there.
feel so at home right now. I'm like, wait, what are we doing? A
We definitely
podcast?
gonna have you
Man.
back for the cookout episode.
for
All
sure.
right.
I'm
Straight up.
in. I'm in.
Yeah, but before we get out of here, we want to talk about the legacy of Sly Stone because I just want to say that I know when I found out, I texted you immediately
You did,
because
and
I know
Yeah.
that Sly Stone to you is like George Duke to me. And I know that the day that George Duke died, I was a fucking mess.
I texted you that day.
You texted me that day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I am.
And Sly Stone for me personally, I think, especially after the documentary, I mean, we kind of already
Questlove
kind of
did a
knew
great
the
job
story.
with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shout to Quest for that.
Incredible documentary.
We all kind of, those of us who really know and who are into that, kind of knew
We
the
already knew
story.
all
We
that
already
stuff.
knew.
Yeah.
But there was deeper insight that maybe we didn't know.
I definitely
And-
learned some stuff by watching the documentary.
And I learned a lot, because of what I've gone through in my own personal struggles in this business and having the burden of black genius.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
just being a
even-
being a black art school kid. Being
Oh, yeah.
being a black weirdo, being a black nerd. These things are all embraced now, but
Yeah.
we were coming up. It was
when we were
Oh,
coming
yeah,
up,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
It was
not
hard,
cool.
man. It was
You
hard.
realize
It was
how-
hard to be a nerd, in that time. Sly was just somebody I connected with so hard, even prior to connecting with him on a musical level, which I obviously connect to him. I'm talking about even before I was a musician. Fortunately, because I grew up in Houston, I saw Sly when I was like 7 years old.
Wow.
Because my uncle took me to the P-Funk concert.
Nice.
He opened up.
He opened up. Yeah.
So I remember it. Like I remember.
Birds of a feather.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just that we all black nerds up out here. You know what I'm saying? So what Sly means to us is
Especially y'all motherfuckers. Y'all got glasses on.
Yeah.
right.
I left mine at home.
But you know what I'm saying? But also be like the essence of cool, the essence of funk and all that, the shit that was cool with him. But to have that, like you said, that genius in him.
But not only have the genius, but have the genius and to do things. There, you hear people talk about, the composition of the band, and he had this and he had that, and it was integrated, and that was, in my opinion, like the farthest thing away
That
from
shit didn't mean nothing.
It
It was just this is my people, right?
It's like,
Exactly.
this is my people.
Right.
And we're going to play. And it's so funny because Sly was a DJ before kind of making it big. And I'm like, man, I'm so glad you walked out of the radio station. Bro, we needed you in front of them keys and writing and doing that whole thing, It's such a beautiful legacy he leaves behind. I mean, we heard the years of the tragic stuff and, some of the same stuff we heard about Marvin, and all that, and not that it wouldn't have been any of us, you dig? With the magnitude of what they were doing with their careers, but
It was us.
If they had money, we didn't have no money. But
exactly.
if we had the money Sly had, we'd be dead.
We'd be no shadow people.
Right.
We'd be in the shadows, all right.
In the shadows of the prison yard.
Of course, yeah, man. But I'm just,
man.
I still.
Did you ever get to see Sly?
Oh, I've seen him a couple times.
Oh,
I saw
yeah?
Sly a few times. I saw Sly one time when he sounded pretty good, and that was in what was that show? I saw a show in Los Angeles, and I'm trying. I can't remember what. Yeah,
Sly in L.A.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't
Did he
remember
show
whether.
up?
Yeah, he did. One of the shows
Was
he
he
wasn't
late?
in good shape with. The other one he actually played pretty well. But I can't remember which was which. And one was L.A. and another one was in. Well, they were both on the West Coast. One would have been in San Francisco, but I think the L.A. show he was in pretty good shape because he had sort of been on a little bit of a stretch of trying to get himself together. You know?
Right.
But you know,
That must
it
have
wasn't
been during
in
the
heyday.
back on
When I
the
see
right
that
track.
thing when he was on Letterman.
Yeah.
Yeah, around
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
But you know, the other time he was, he wasn't doing well at all. You know, but hey, man, we all knew what the game was. We knew what was up with Sly. So it's you kind of excuse that kind of thing, and you wish him the best now. Godspeed to him, man, because he just left. What about that freaking catalog?
Right.
Exactly.
The catalog is. I also want to say rest in peace to Brian Wilson because
Yes.
when we lose legends in pairs like that, one
And rest in peace, Ananda Lewis.
Ananda Lewis,
Lewis.
a slept-on legend.
Because my God, Ananda Lewis.
For our childhood,
for
that
our
was a
child,
big.
that was gonna be. I just knew that was gonna be my wife.
Yeah,
Everybody-
I was
everybody-
there for you. She waiting for you. I play
I said, I'm gonna write these songs. I'm gonna get these songs
get on
out, and I'm
MTV.
gonna go get my wife.
I'm going
I'm
But
gonna
you know
go
who
get
she
my
was married
wife.
to, huh?
Who?
She was married to Will Smith's brother.
brother. Yeah.
I'm gonna go get my wife.
But anyway,
Yeah,
shit, I
rest in
forgot what I
peace
was
to
gonna
all
say.
of them people.
Oh,
'cause
well, speaking of Brian, I was thinking about Brian Wilson and Sly. Like, I'm sure they've crossed paths musically.
Oh my God.
At some point, but I'm sure they hung out, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm wondering about that. I'm
There
like,
was a hang
well,
at
I'm
some
like,
point.
I'm like, that hang had to be epic.
You know what?
Yeah.
There's a funny story that I heard about Brian Wilson the other day, where Don Henley from the Eagles,
Singing drummer,
Eagles.
love him.
Yep.
Love singing drummers.
Don
All singing
Henley
drummers.
went to Brian. I guess they some show they went to, and he had a copy of Pet Sounds. And he went up to Brian Wilson, and he was, geeked out and everything. And was like, "Hey, man, can you please sign my record?" Brian was like, "Yeah, sure." And he signed it. And he's like, "Dear Don, thanks for all the great songs."
Wow.
And he saw that, and he was like, "Oh shit!" And he started walking away. And Brian said, "Come back here." And he grabs the record and he crosses out "great" and puts "good." I was like, yeah, okay. There
The
you
Eagles,
go.
I mean, great.
Good song. No, man, some of that stuff in Pet Sounds and even all the rest of that, he wasn't the wall of sound guy, but
The harmonies, though.
Right.
yeah,
he's
man,
a brilliant
that whole
writer.
lush.
And the other thing too, I think for me personally, like Pet Sounds explored a level of recording techniques. We go back to talking about nerddom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And these are things, especially now that I have
Also
my own
genius.
studio.
Just-
That's what I'm saying.
yeah.
But those are the things that allow you to access your genius.
And how young he was doing that, though.
Yeah,
he
he was doing this crazy shit when he was, and I mean, it could have been some other things that helped to
it
contribute to
helped
that.
along or
But he
influence.
found something
Right.
that we now, I mean, years ago, that we now really take seriously. And it's
Stacking
like,
vocals and all that.
stacking all of the vocals, bro. I'm so glad I got my own studio, so don't nobody have to wait for me. You ain't got to wait for me no way, because I go in there and hit that bitch one time.
Right.
I know what I need to do. You know what I'm saying? But it's really cool to be able to do that and see what I can do. And now my music is starting to be because of things that Sly did also. Because of those paths that they carved out for us.
Yeah, with nowhere near the technology
With
that you
nowhere
have.
near the technology.
Yeah.
Imagine
Imagine
if all they had
how
was
many
one
tracks.
press a
Drum
button.
machines before people.
Yeah. How many
It's like,
tracks?
It's a drum machine.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, the drummer, you gonna leave? Okay. I got this little box right here. It made the dopest
And made
shit of
5
all
number
time.
1 hits off the box.
5 number ones.
Right.
You know?
Amazing.
So crazy.
Crazy.
But yeah, we'd like to thank you so much for coming.
Oh, man.
Before we get
Thanks.
out of here, is there anything that you'd like to promote?
Promote? Oh man, not really. Promote let's
Other than
promote
being one of the dopest motherfuckers of all time.
Promote the Shadow People podcast.
Yeah,
Let's
baby.
do that.
But, any message to people in New Orleans? Because the people in New Orleans listen to you. They don't listen to us. They listen to you, though.
We talked about Juneteenth. We got a Juneteenth show that's actually airing 6:30. Chris Leach and I co-host, and we cover some of the stuff. And I let me draw this back to something we were talking about earlier. You mentioned about supporting black businesses on Juneteenth, right? Our institutions are under assault. And our institutions and institutions that tell the history of our people are under assault, right?
Absolutely.
And this ain't got nothing to do with the show other than the fact that we cover one of those institutions, Ashe. And one of the goals that Asali has over there, and I think this is kind of a roadmap for some of those organizations across the country, is to be more self-sustaining. Be more self-sustaining, to try to develop a means of having an income, be it by way of a venue or by way of events or whatever the story is, so that when them people decide, hey, we're going to cut off the money down there to the black folks, we don't want to give them no more money, that ain't y'all decision to make. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Our decision is to support our own in our community, and therefore we're not at the whims.
Love Asali.
There you go. We're not at the whims of who's going to decide whether we have a Shadow People podcast, whether we have an Ashe, whether we have our own Juneteenth celebrations or anything like that, that we decide that for ourselves. And I just think that at the end of the day, that was something you said earlier, man, that's golden. I love it.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Beautiful.
Well, we appreciate you for coming. Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
you, bro. Yes,
we
indeed.
love
Derek,
you, and we
love you,
definitely,
baby.
we definitely gonna have you back.
Yeah,
Hold on,
another one.
man.
The
Have me
cookout
back.
episode is coming.
The cookout episode is coming.
Cookout episode
We
is
definitely
coming.
want to have you back, and we're going to talk about the importance of staying out of people's face. My name is Nigel Hall. This is Derek Freeman. This is LBJ. Thank you so much for tuning into this special episode of the podcast. We out.
We out. See y'all
Happy
next time.
Juneteenth.
Happy
White people
Juneteenth,
stay
y'all.
home.
Happy Juneteenth.